You told me last year that you believed Jeffrey Epstein would haunt President Trump from his grave. And according to the documents released on the 30th, the FBI received unverified tips alleging sexual assault against President Trump. But the FBI did note in their emails that the tips were secondhand, a lot of them, and there was no way to corroborate them. President Trump has always denied any wrongdoing here. And I want to read what the DOJ said in a statement they released with this document dump. Some of the documents contain untrue and sensationalist claims against President Trump that were submitted to the FBI right before the 2020 election. To be clear, the claims are unfounded and false, and if they have a shred of credibility, they certainly would have been weaponized against President Trump already. There are thousands of Trump-related references in the latest batch of the Epstein documents. Did you learn anything new about the relationship between Epstein and Trump?
Well, I think there was some significant details that came in the document dump around the right around the time of the holidays before this massive document dump, and that had to do with two things that really stood out to me. One was, and we really learned this for the first time. Now we know, of course, people who have followed the story know that Virginia Giuffre, the main accuser of Prince Andrew and the others, had worked at Mar-a-Lago as a spa attendant, and she was recruited at Mar-a-Lago Spa by Ghislaine Maxwell. Ghislaine Maxwell said she was representing Jeffrey Epstein. At the time, Virginia was 17 years old. She was offered a job to do personal massages with Jeffrey Epstein, and that led to the sexual slavery that Virginia said took place at the hands of Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. That she was, in her words, lent out to numerous men. I mentioned some of the names early on in our interview here, but that gave us that we knew, of course, was an association with Trump and Mar-a-Lago. And Trump has said in months past that he cut off ties with Jeffrey Epstein. One of the reasons being that Jeffrey Epstein was stealing employees from him, and of course that can certainly include Virginia Giuffre. What we didn't know until the previous document dump was that Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago spa was actually sending women over to Jeffrey Epstein's home to conduct massages privately for Jeffrey Epstein. And this is quite shocking. And we know from the previous document dump that that one girl had said, had told her family that, and it got back to Mar-a-Lago, that Jeffrey Epstein had made sexual advances against her. And we've never really received a full explanation as to, in the timeline, when that occurred, why didn't the officials at the Mar-a-Lago spa alert the police to that incident, why it was covered up, how much of that information got back to Trump at the time. So that's relatively eye-opening that Mar-a-Lago was sending women, and in many cases, there's an indication that one girl was a minor, from what I read in the documents, who was sent there. The other thing that was troubling to me from the previous document dump was the fact that Donald Trump had said he never took any flights on Jeffrey Epstein's plane. And the previous document dump showed that, in fact, he did take flights on Jeffrey Epstein's plane. And as the DOJ said in the report, that at least one of the girls on this particular flight with Donald Trump was a victim who was a possible witness for the Ghislaine Maxwell trial. So that placed Donald Trump on the private plane with one of Jeffrey Epstein's victims. And you have to wonder, when this was taking place, what did Donald Trump think of this woman? What did he think the circumstances were in terms of why she was traveling with Jeffrey Epstein at the time. Did they interact? Did he have a conversation with her? It goes to the heart of a question that I've had related to this entire story, and that is why so many of these smart, wealthy, powerful men didn't question why Jeffrey Epstein was surrounding himself with these young girls, and raise it to the point of, should any of this be reported? I wonder about that. And that same document dump, we had photos of former President Clinton swimming in a pool with a young woman who has been identified as a Epstein victim. Now, again, the same question goes to former President Trump that I'm asking of Donald Trump, and that is, at the time you're in this situation, what was your sense of thinking who this person is, why they had access to this situation? Did they interact in terms of, did he ask her who she was, what she was doing? Was there any indication that this girl was in any type of distress? I'm most troubled by these men who have not been accused specifically of sexual wrongdoing, but Donald Trump said years later, I broke things off with him when I learned this about him, the fact that he tried to pick up a young daughter of one of his Mar-a-Lago members, and Trump cut off ties with Jeffrey Epstein. But going back years, why didn't these powerful individuals question what was going on? You have to. There's a quote, not in my book, but in another Epstein book, and Donald Trump said, he once was at Jeffrey Epstein's home, and he saw all these young girls outside of Jeffrey Epstein's swimming pool in Palm Beach, and thought, well, maybe isn't that nice? Jeffrey Epstein is opening up his house to the neighborhood children. Now, I don't know if he said that, meant to say that in a joking way, but these individuals were aware that Jeffrey Epstein had some type of strange connection to these young girls. In fact, and we know this has been verified by one of the witnesses, Jeffrey Epstein took one of his victims to Donald Trump and said, used the quote, isn't this a good one? In a sense of, isn't this, whatever Epstein meant by this, but it was certainly meant in some type of a sexual context. So I'm most fascinated through these files of learning about the fact that these men had connections with Jeffrey Epstein, but none of them alerted the authorities as to what might have been going on. And that also goes to the co-executors of Jeffrey Epstein's his lawyer, his accountant, who for years must have had a sense that something was not right with Jeffrey Epstein. Some of the files I just read, in fact, this morning, showed that Epstein had his accountant send $250,000 without any question to a young woman. So it raises questions as to the people around him had to have a sense that something was going on, but nobody was willing to alert authorities. And this went on for many, many years.